Broadcast Center, this is 22 News in Focus.
Welcome to 22 News in Focus. I'm Laura Hutchinson. Today we have a special Decision 2014 edition of In Focus. On today's program, we'll have two half-hour debates on the statewide ballot questions 2 and 3. Question 2 concerns an expansion of the state's bottle bill. Question 3 is an effort to repeal the state's casino gambling law. We'll start today with a debate on Question 3. Here to represent the yes on Question 3 side, we have John Ribeiro, chairman of Repeal the Casino Deal campaign, and representing the no on Question 3 side, we have Mike Mathis, president of MGM Springfield. The debate will begin with each representative giving a 1-minute opening statement. By way of drawing, it was determined Mr. Ribeiro will start us off today.
Thank you, Laura. Before 2011, when the law was passed initially, the legislature and the governor made 2 attempts at passing this law in open session. They had debates and public options of folks to come out and speak, but they failed to pass that on 2 different occasions in an open session. Finally, in 2011, the Speaker, Senate President, and Governor went into backroom caucus on their own and came out with their own version of a bill that benefits the casino industry. It was written by and for the casino industry. And as we have seen it play out here in Massachusetts, every single concession has been made for the casino industry. When you look at what happened at Suffolk Downs and Revere, where the voters of East Boston voted it down, the Gaming Commission moved it over 200 yards and allowed that to go forward. When Steve Wynn was kicked out of Foxborough, the chairman of the Gaming Commission called him up and said, I know a guy in Everett who might have some land. And we saw recently that there were indictments that were handed up. And this is why we're asking folks to come out and vote yes on Question 3 on November 4th. Okay,
Mr. Mathis, you have 1 minute.
Thank you, Laura. I think it's appropriate that we talk about the law itself. Mr. Ribeiro wants to talk about backroom deals and different innuendo, but I think it's the Gaming Act itself. I hope we have a chance to talk about that today. We think it's the best piece of gaming legislation in the country. The legislature took a lot of time, went around to different jurisdictions, and made sure there are things like local choice. That's an important aspect. We got Springfield to support this project. Different communities were unable to do that, and I think that's the way it was supposed to work. 6 passed it, 5 didn't. This law also requires us to go out to the surrounding communities. We've done that with outreach, a really important aspect of the gaming bill. And it also provided for discussions with impacted venues and businesses. Again, a really progressive piece of legislation. We think it's the best in the country, not because it makes it easy on us operators, but it requires a lot of concessions and a lot of outreach. And that's the reason we're asking people to vote no on 3 on this really important piece of economic development.
Okay, again, today's debate is Lincoln Douglas style. Each person has 30 seconds to ask a question to the other. There's time for a 1-minute reply and then a 30-second rebuttal. The drawing determined, Mr. Ribeiro will ask the first question today.
We've seen casinos offer empty promises in state after state. In Ohio, for example, they promised 34,000 jobs. 2 years later, only 7,000 jobs have materialized. It's a 2-part question. What redress do voters have when your jobs and revenue estimates fail to pan out? And can you tell us the exact number of jobs that you are required to give out to Springfield or Massachusetts residents in order to hold on to your license?
Sure. I'm not in a position to talk about other jurisdictions, and I know that's what the yes on 3 folks want to talk about. If you listen to their rhetoric, you think you'd be repealing the Ohio Gaming Act or the Michigan Gaming Act or the New Jersey Gaming Act. I think the really important question, and I think the second part of your question is the more appropriate one, is let's look at our proposal, let's look at the Gaming Act here in Massachusetts, and I would ask you to suggest anywhere MGM has ever failed to meet its promises. We're one of the blue chip companies in the industry, as is Wynn and Penn National. With respect to the promise of jobs, we're projecting 3,000 to 3,100 permanent jobs. Might it be 2,950 or might it be 3,200 at some point? That's possible. There are no guarantees with respect to the employment. What we do is we look at our business model, we look at other operations that we have, and we're able to consistently identify the number of individuals it takes to run these properties. These are going to be 3,000 more jobs or whatever number your concern is going to be that are not in the market today. And I think that's an important part of that issue.
Okay, would you like a rebuttal?
Yes. Clearly, Mr. Mathis hasn't answered the question. The Gaming Act doesn't require any jobs to be handed out. It only requires that the developers make best efforts to hand out jobs in the local area. If they hire 0 people from Springfield or even in Massachusetts, and people need to consider that casinos are closing in Atlantic City and there have been major layoffs in Connecticut. There are experienced casino workers already out there that are coming here, flooding the area, will be flooding the area to take on those jobs if the casino does open.
Mr. Mathis, it's your question.
Sure. While we're on the topic of jobs, which I think is the most important issue, one I want to say for Atlantic City, that market continues to generate 31,000 jobs, notwithstanding some of the challenges they have in that market. So I think that's an important fact. John, I've heard you and your colleagues run around the state over the last few months saying that the 10,000 permanent jobs our industry will offer in Massachusetts are not real jobs. On behalf of the 62,000 men and women that I work with at MGM Resorts and the hundreds of thousands of hospitality and casino employees in the industry, please tell me which of our jobs are not real jobs. We have hospitality jobs, we have front clerk jobs, we have accounting jobs. Which of those are not real jobs?
You've never heard me say they aren't real jobs. I personally think that any job that someone's willing to show up for is a real job, and I'm not going to tell anybody that something's not a good job or a bad job. The problem with your projections are that you're saying that those are going to be new jobs, net new jobs in an economy. That money is already being spent in the economy. That's nearly $700 million that you're expected to take in at your establishment is going to come from within 30 minutes, mostly, more than 70%, according to your own filings with the Gaming Commission, more than 70% of the people are going to be coming from within a 30-minute drive. So that money is already being put to work. Those people are already at work in the economy. And what we've seen around the country is that when casinos come, they take jobs off of Main Street and they bring them into the casinos. In fact, you're projected to take in almost $130 million in restaurant revenue in your casinos. That's money that's already being spent in local restaurants and establishments, and you can hand out free alcohol. How is that? That's not even fair to the businesses that already exist in Springfield.
A rebuttal?
Yeah, I've heard you say they're not real jobs. I'll leave it up to the public to go and do the research. Your colleague, Al Cabot, came out to our showcase and talked to 600 people who were looking for jobs and told them that it wasn't worth coming to investigate the things that we were doing because they weren't real jobs. So I think you guys need to get perhaps your story straight on the Yes on 3 side. With respect to the small businesses, we've gotten endorsements from every regional chamber, the Boston Chamber, the Springfield Chamber, the Worcester Chamber. They all recognize what we recognize, which is when you have a development of this nature, it has a spin-off impact and it promotes local businesses.
Mr. Ribeiro, it's your question.
Just going back to the idea of this law. This law was written again with the Gaming Commission, the Gaming Commission and casino developers in mind. It actually was written by the casino developers. How do you explain the fact that your business has an unfair competitive advantage over existing businesses? You can stay open 24/7, 365. You can hand out free alcohol to people. And I drove by a number of car dealerships on the way. The car dealerships can't do that. And not only that, the car dealerships can't hand out loans to people, which your business is able to do, which gives you an unfair competitive advantage over other businesses.
Mr. Mathis.
Yeah, that's news to me that car dealerships can't hand out loans. I've gotten plenty of loans for my cars.
They come from a bank.
Got it. Let me answer your question. Again, let's talk about the Gaming Act itself. The most important aspect of it is economic development. We're going to invest $800 million in this project in Springfield. Springfield hasn't seen that kind of economic development ever. Western Massachusetts hasn't seen that kind of economic development ever. I've been in conversations with small businesses, including the ones on Main Street you're worried about. They're some of our biggest endorsers. We hosted a concert at Mass Mutual about 1.5 years ago. It was the first major act. Pitbull, it wasn't a kennel show, it was actually a rapper, came down, sold 5,000 seats. And when that show broke, those people spilled out into Main Street. Those businesses are telling us, which we've seen before, that they saw some of their best numbers. They finally have traffic and foot traffic on Main Street. So I think the proof is in the supporters that we have. We have over 500 endorsers, many of them small businesses.
Rebuttal?
Mr. Mathis, you and the other casino developers haven't come to Massachusetts to do us any favors. You came from Las Vegas to take the profits back to Las Vegas. You're going to take back over $140 million roughly back to Las Vegas with you when you leave Massachusetts. You're not putting anything back on Main Street. You're taking money that's already here, and you haven't opened a casino. If you want to open an entertainment complex, we welcome that here in Massachusetts. And the fact that that kind of economic development hasn't happened yet here in Massachusetts, that's a failure of government leadership, and that's what this law is. It represents a failure of the leadership of our government.
Mr. Mathis, is this your question?
Regardless of the result on November 4th, there's one thing we do know. On Wednesday, November 5th, thousands of Massachusetts residents will get into their cars or board buses and spend their money at Connecticut and Rhode Island casinos, as happens every day. They may go there to gamble, they may go there for a restaurant to see a show, stay at a spa, or just stay a long weekend. So John, here's the question. Why do you want Massachusetts to continue to fund jobs and tax revenue for other states when there's 200,000 unemployed in Massachusetts and there's so many initiatives like education and road infrastructure that our $400 million in tax revenue will come in annually that could fund? Why do you want to allow that gift?
Let's look at what that money has actually done for Connecticut. Year after year, Connecticut is considered one of the worst places to do business in America. It used to be the insurance capital of the world, in the country, if not the world. And now it's known as the embezzlement capital of the world. Former police chiefs, former mayors of the towns that surround the casinos say that none of the promises have come through. Mohegan Sun had to hold an actual forum on human trafficking to let their employees know what that might look like and how to spot it and how to detect it. Again, you're talking about taking money that's already here in Massachusetts off of Main Street. If the projections come true, which is unlikely because of all of the saturation in the Northeast, Donald Trump and others have said that Northeast is saturated. Even the CEO of Penn Gaming, who is seeking a license or has a license here in Massachusetts, has said that the Northeast is saturated. Your promises haven't panned out anywhere else, and they're not going to pan out here in Massachusetts either. And we're going to send you packing on November 4th.
Rebuttal?
Yeah, again, I think John's mixing up some of his talking points. We're not talking about dollars on Main Street. We're talking about established data, and this needs to be a fact-driven discussion. Data about money that goes across the state line. Massachusetts is the biggest gaming market in New England, and it doesn't have a single casino. Connecticut and Rhode Island have thrived on this issue. The Connecticut tribes generate 13,000 jobs, good-paying jobs, $1 billion of economic development. And the question is, for the public, is why do you want to continue to send those dollars across the state line? We're urging a no on 3.
Mr. Ribeiro, it's your question.
At the Fort Hall Forum in Boston last week, you stated that Massachusetts is losing jobs and revenue to Rhode Island, Connecticut, and you did again today. Connecticut, why would you want to follow in the footsteps of these two states? Unemployment in Rhode Island is nearly twice the national average. Again, Connecticut is ranked as a very poor state to do business in. It's a rat hole that you're going down if we follow in the footsteps of Connecticut and Rhode Island.
That's a great question, and again, I think it goes to what we believe is the quality of the Massachusetts Gaming Act. Before the Gaming Act was passed, and it's been a long, torturous process, they commissioned 2 studies, went out into different jurisdictions and looked at the best of the best practices. One of the things that they discovered in Connecticut, for example, is not enough of the tax revenue stayed with the local municipality. So one of the things they required in the Massachusetts Gaming Act is that there be a host community agreement. In our case in Springfield, we're taking a piece of property that's tornado ravaged. We're going to pay $800 million of economic development on it, and a parcel that currently pays $634,000 to Mayor Sarno and the people of Springfield. We're going to pay $25 million. And that's going to go to early education funding, to public safety, to road infrastructure. So I think the question that you need to ask is, what were the lessons learned in those other jurisdictions, and how are they accomplished and covered in the Massachusetts Gaming Act? We think very well.
We're told over and over again that the Mass legislature and the governor took the best of states around the country, the 38 other states. Nearly all of the 38 other states have higher unemployment than Massachusetts. And what you're seeing in terms of this Gaming Act is that every single concession is in favor of the casino industry. The Gaming Commission and the law itself does not hold accountable Mr. Mathis, MGM, Penn, or Wynn to any of the promises they made, and there's no way to actually close the casinos once they open if they fail to live up to their promises.
Mr. Mathis, your question.
John, if you're successful Tuesday night, 500 construction workers will get their final paychecks on the Plain Ridge construction site. They'll be kicked off the site because that project will come to a halt. Springfield and Western Mass will lose the largest construction project in the region's history, and the Everett Monsanto site will lose a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity for redevelopment. I know you came to Springfield a few months ago, I understand for the first time, to kick off this anti-campaign, and that you and your supporters are happy to show up at our job and vendor showcases to distribute your collateral about the lack of economic development. My question to you is, what are you going to say to those 500 construction workers on November 5th about their chances at the next job and the next form of development?
You know, those construction jobs are real, and I'm glad that there are people that are working at these sites today. But in the long term, in the long run, what people have seen, what has happened, and this is proven fact as well, people can look at Illinois, for instance. They have about 12 casinos. They have 8,000 people working at those 12 casinos. We're talking about 3 casinos and a slot parlor, and we're talking about the same number of jobs. Again, there's no guarantee on those jobs, and if you don't hold up to those promises, there's nothing to hold you accountable. In fact, what we see in the data, what's shown, is that for every slot machine that is out there that's put into an existing economy, 1 job is lost from that economy, because those slot machines are the highest paid employees at the casinos. In fact, they take between $600 and $1,000 per day off of the street that's already being spent in a local economy. So this idea that there are new jobs coming to Springfield or anywhere else in Massachusetts is just a fallacy.
Rebuttal?
Yeah, as you can see, Mr. Ribeiro doesn't have a great answer for that question. I was at this Ford Hall forum that he mentioned with former Attorney General Scott Harshbarger. He didn't have an answer for that question. The truth is, whether it's 3,000 jobs or 2,900 jobs or 3,100 jobs, there are new jobs to the market. There's going to be construction workers working on this site. We have 2,000 construction jobs for this site. And there is no question. If you're one of the 500 people that are going to get a pink slip on Wednesday, I don't think Mr. Ribeiro's answer is going to really help you figure out how you can pay your mortgage or your kids' bills the next day.
Okay, and we are going to stop there for right now. We'll continue this debate on ballot question 3 after we take a short break. Stay with us. You're watching 22 News in Focus. You're watching 22 News in Focus. We are continuing the debate now on ballot question 3, calling for a repeal of the casino gambling law. Here to debate, we have John Ribeiro, chairman of the Repeal the Casino Deal campaign, representing the yes vote, and we have Michael Mathis, president of MGM Springfield, here representing the no vote. When we left off, Mr. Mathis asked the last question, so Mr. Ribeiro, it's your question now.
If Massachusetts residents and voters are so much in favor of bringing casinos to Massachusetts, and you have such widespread support across the state, why has the No on 3 committee felt the need to spend over $7.5 million and buy this election? And those donations have come from just a handful of people.
Yeah, we haven't bought any election. We've got labor behind us. We've got tourism bureaus behind us. Look at our website. This is all about data. So while the other side wants to paint us as the outsiders and trying to manipulate the process, I think you have to look at the grassroots effort. We have 500 different endorsers, a lot of them political officials that voted for this bill originally. The money we're spending on the airwaves and in print and in direct mail is about education. This is a new industry to Massachusetts, and we understand that it's got some stigmas and stereotypes. The 21st Century Casino Company is an MGM and a Wynn Resorts. We are the top entertainment company in the world. We sold 7 million show tickets last year. We revolutionized this industry by producing shows like Cirque du Soleil and Celebrity Chefs, and we want to bring a piece of that to Springfield. So we're out there trying to educate the public about this industry and what is the evolution of this industry in our business.
Rebuttal?
21st Century Casino industry. MGM lost its license in Atlantic City to operate. And only after almost 5 casinos were closing and saw the decimation of Atlantic City, and when nearly 1 in 4 people were going to lose their jobs, did MGM regain their license. So I'd say you're under investigation now for corruption charges in Macau.
Mr. Mathis, it's your question.
Penn National, who is building their slot facility in Plainville, recently opened a casino resort in Bangor, Maine. The project was controversial at first, and local businesses and citizens expressed concerns about the potential impacts of the casino. 10 years later, the mayor and the business officials and the police chief of Bangor have all said those fears were not realized, and in fact, credit the tax revenue from the project to funding their new convention center. Here's the question. If I'll concede that not every casino company and not every project is right for every community, well, you can see that certain ones are, and that MGM, Wynn, and Penn may be the best of the best.
The CEO of Penn said about a year ago that the Northeast was saturated, and that includes that casino up in Bangor, Maine. You may have found 1 out of 1,000 in the country that isn't doing so badly, but when you look in community after community, I'll give you an example. Lawrenceburg, Indiana. where they said, we're going to pave the streets, we're going to build new schools, and all those things did happen. But they had to build an entire new courthouse to handle all the crime that came along with it. Again, in study after study, independent study after independent study, and don't bring out Clyde Barrow, who's been paid by the industry time and time again to bolster your numbers. In every independent study, it shows that crime goes up, small businesses can't compete with casinos, and property values go down. It's just a bad deal for Massachusetts.
Rebuttal?
Yeah, my biggest concern about this discussion and this debate has been that there is no form of gaming law that would satisfy the folks that are on the other side. There is no proposal that would satisfy them. There is no operator that they would think good enough to do business here in Massachusetts, and that's fine. But the point is that this is a respectable industry. We're a Fortune 500 company, widely recognized for all of our initiatives, and that there needs to be a discussion of our proposal, our company, and the things that each of us are trying to do in our host communities.
Mr. Ribeiro, it's your question.
In endorsement of a yes vote on question 3, the Boston Globe warned that the oversaturated casino market increases the likelihood that one or more of the Massachusetts facilities will struggle and eventually come back to Beacon Hill seeking relief from some of the law's requirements, as they have in Delaware. Delaware just recently gave a $10 million tax break to their casinos. Will you commit an MGM, on MGM's behalf, to never asking the state legislature for funds or loosening of those regulations?
I won't make that commitment, and no company should, because we don't know what the future calls out for. But what I would say is, look at our record. Have we ever asked for a gaming tax break? The answer is no, and that's the problem. If there was evidence that MGM or Wynn or Penn National had performed badly in any of these jurisdictions, I guarantee you'd hear it from the other side. What they want to do is look at other jurisdictions, look at other operators, and say, those are bad examples of gaming in those jurisdictions, and for those reasons you should reject these proposals. With all due respect, we submitted thousands of pages to the Gaming Commission. They had a number of consultants look at it, and our proposals and our companies deserve a detailed review, and not just a bunch of innuendo and bad examples from other jurisdictions.
The Massachusetts Gaming Commission has already made requests of the legislature to amend the existing law to change, for instance, the requirement that if someone wins in your casino and they win $600 or more, that they be checked to see if they owe back taxes or child support. And the Gaming Commission has already gone back and asked for a loosening of that and for a doubling of that. That's going to impact people in a way that it shouldn't, in one of the ways that we were supposed to have been protected by this law. And clearly it's already failing before a casino ever even opens.
Mr. Mathis, it's your question.
John, your group produced a recent one-page report on the alleged hit to the Massachusetts Lottery, which just attempted to scare communities into thinking they'd lose significant local aid. As you know, Steve Grossman came out right afterwards. He's the state treasurer who manages the lottery, and he called it a Hail Mary and scare tactics, and he's in support of the law. So regardless, no one would disagree that the Massachusetts Lottery is very successful and important to municipal budgets. Here's the question. Why is that form of gambling, which does not create hospitality jobs, does not create off-site entertainment, does not create construction jobs, why is that an acceptable form of gambling and casino gambling isn't?
First off, 3 of the 4 candidates for treasurer this year support a repeal of the casino gambling law. Chairman Crosby did say that the lottery was going to take a major hit. Massachusetts does have the most successful lottery in the country and returns nearly $1 billion every year directly to cities and towns. So it does create jobs. It creates firefighter jobs. It creates police jobs. It makes our roads safe. So that money is being put to work in the local economy. And I'll tell you why it's different from gambling. When you look at the slot machines, which is the core business of MGM, again, if they want to open an entertainment facility, they're welcome to do it. When their slot machines, they don't have to post their odds, and they know the way it works. Every time you press that button, you're going to lose at least 10% of your money. And while you're there, they can give you free drinks. You may be able to lose your paycheck at the lottery, but at MGM, you can lose your house. And even if you don't go to the casino, your neighbor can lose their house, which will impact your property value. And that's what happens at casinos.
A rebuttal?
Yeah, I think everyone recognizes the hypocrisy and the double standard around anyone who defends a lottery, and I think they do perform an important service in terms of municipal revenues. But there is a double standard out there. With casino gaming, especially a company like ours, MGM, and our project, we're going to bring non-gaming amenities to downtown Springfield. We're going to turn on Mass Mutual Center. Our theater is Symphony Hall and City Stage. We're going to put acts in there. We've contractually committed to an act a month. So there's a lot more benefits that come from our project than the other side said would lead you to believe, and that's why we're urging a no on 3.
Okay, we're going to stop you both right there. Time now for closing statements. We initially said at the beginning that you'd have a minute, but after a spirited debate, we've gone a little long, so each candidate will have 45 seconds. We did conduct a drawing, and it found that Mr. Ribeiro, you will go first. You have 45 seconds.
Folks, there's not a single community or state that's been made better because of the arrival of casinos. The idea that the MGM proposal is going to save a storm-ravaged downtown Springfield, or that a wind proposal is going to clean up a toxic waste dump is a mirage in and of itself. We should be holding our public officials accountable and not relying on out-of-state folks to come in who are promising us, really in a Tom Sawyer-like fashion, that they're going to give us the world, when in reality what they're looking to do is to take back money that's already working in our economy, putting people to work, back to in their pockets, back home to Las Vegas.
Okay, Mr. Mathis, 45 seconds.
You know, the debate we're having today is the same debate we had over the last nine months to a year before we got our Springfield vote. And this is in our case, this is a community that's rejected casinos back in 1994 and 1995. And I think with good reason, because they didn't do, those operators didn't propose what we proposed, which is a really innovative design and a project under a great regulatory system. What I would say is we've seen the experiment of what a no casino situation can do for Springfield. There's been 25 years of stagnation and lack of economic development. Highest unemployment in the state, highest high school dropout in the state. What I would ask is respect the vote of the Springfield citizens who want to take back their future. Give us a chance. Please vote no on 3.
Okay, and that concludes our debate on statewide ballot question 3. We want to thank you both for being here and debating today. After a short break, we'll have a debate on ballot question 2, which is on the expansion of the state's bottle bill. You're watching 22 News in Focus. Welcome back to 22 News in Focus. I'm Laura Hutchinson. We are continuing our special Decision 2014 edition of 22 News in Focus. Last half hour, we had a debate on ballot question 3, which was the effort to repeal the state's casino gambling law. Now we turn to question 2, the expansion of the state's bottle bill. Here to represent the yes on question 2 side, we have Phil Seago from the Massachusetts Sierra Club, and representing the no on question 2 side, we have Nicole Giambusso from no on question 2, stopped forced deposits. The debate will begin with each representative giving a 1-minute opening statement. By way of a drawing, it was determined that Mr. Seago will start us off.
Hi, thank you very much for inviting me. There are 3 major reasons why somebody would support question 2 with a yes vote. The first is that the bottle bill is the best recycling system that we've had, not only in Massachusetts and not only in the United States, but around the world. It's copied everywhere. That's because 80% of containers that are covered by the bottle bill, like this bottle here, are recycled. Unfortunately, only 23% of these, which is a water bottle, it's not covered by the bottle bill, so it's only recycled about 23% of the time. The rest are winding up as litter and trash, litter in our ball fields, parks, and playgrounds. Because of the deposit, you rarely see deposit bottles in our parks and playgrounds. Litter also costs a tremendous amount of money to clean up. This will save $7 million in cleanup fees. However, what voters should know is who our opponents are. They are out-of-state big beverage companies who are spending $8 million to essentially buy this election, and with misleading and false data, and they've been caught by investigative journalists.
And that is time. Thank you. Ms. Giambusso, you have 1 minute.
Hi, my name is Nicole Giambusso, and I'm the spokesperson for No on Question 2, Stop Forced Deposits. Question 2 is essentially going to cost too much and do too little. We have over 3,000 members in the No on Question 2 coalition. That includes environmentalists, recyclers, individuals, community organizations, businesses, grocers who think this proposal will cost too much and do too little. Question 2 would add about $68 million a year to grocery costs, and it would only increase recycling by 0.1%. So that's a minuscule increase for something that's going to cost everybody more money at the checkout counter. The statistics that Phil lists around recycling for deposit containers are simply not accurate. We haven't seen any research to prove that those numbers are true. The truth is that we have access to recycling today that we didn't in 1982 when the deposit law passed. We need to build on curbside and community recycling programs that are convenient and work better.
Okay, thank you both. And today's debate is Lincoln Douglas style, which means each person has 30 seconds to ask a question to the other. There's time for a 1-minute reply and a 30-second rebuttal. The drawing determined that Mr. Segal will ask the first question.
Thank you. So far, every number, every dollar amount, every statistic that the other side has given has come under scrutiny, has been seen by investigative journalists and exposed as being false and misleading. I was giving a seminar yesterday, and during the seminar, the other side changed their numbers continually during the debate. All your claims seem to be designed to mislead voters. The No On 2 campaign has lost its credibility. How can you expect voters to believe you?
Well, let me talk about our numbers and where they come from, because they're accurate numbers and they are very well researched numbers. A lot of our numbers about the cost and inefficiency of question 2 come from a recent report by Northbridge Environmental Management Consultants. This organization also does research, does work for the Federal Environmental Protection Agency and for the Massachusetts Department of Environmental Protection, so they're highly credible. We also took the extra step of having that study peer-reviewed, hiring a professor of economics, a 25-year professor at Tufts University, to give the report another look, and he endorsed the report. So these numbers are thorough, and they're on our website for anybody who has any interest to look at. Anyone can go on to noonquestion2.com under media and look at our numbers. I don't see the other side disclosing the research that supports any of their numbers, but we've been incredibly transparent. This is going to cost too much and do too little.
A rebuttal?
The report that my opponent is referring to was paid for by the bottling industry. The professor was also paid off by the bottling industry. Their numbers have absolutely no foundation in any real data. Our numbers come from the state government, from the federal government, and from truly independent research. However, all of their numbers that have come under scrutiny have been proven false.
Okay, Ms. Giambusso, it's your question.
Sure. Question 2 will add about $68 million a year to grocery costs, just across the board from higher handling costs. But it will also add about $27 million a year to in unclaimed deposits that people will send to the state. So under question 2, that 5-cent deposit that people will be paying on each container will automatically go up every 5 years. Why did your side include that in the proposal?
You know, there you go again. In the past, every time a state has tried to update their bottle bill or make any changes whatsoever, the opponents have made absurd claims. You have claimed in front of me 140 million. I've heard 20, 40, 60, 80 million. Every day the number changes. The reality is that voting yes on question 2 will save consumers money, it will clean our parks, and it will decrease the total amount of trash, and it will increase recycling.
Okay, is there a rebuttal?
Sure. I don't see how question 2 is going to save people money. We have numerous grocers in our coalition who are concerned that if this passes, they'll have to raise prices. People here in Massachusetts already spend enough on groceries. People are usually trying to keep their weekly grocery bills down and can't afford to have them go up at all. And this includes people who are using curbside recycling. They put everything in the bin and they're being responsible. And by doing that, they'll be giving away 5 cents per container to the state. It just doesn't make sense.
Mr. Segal, it's your question.
Big beverage companies have spent a whopping $8 million here in Massachusetts to defeat a common sense recycling measure. But you haven't spent a nickel to clean up the 5 million bottles a day that are littered and thrown out as trash. DEP says that only 23% of all the bottles out there that are not covered by deposits are recycled. Well, how can you justify destroying the election process with your out-of-state big business dollars?
Thank you, Phil. Again, those numbers are not accurate that Phil's putting out there. But I'd like to tell you a little bit again about the coalition. First of all, beverage companies, as we've disclosed very transparently, are supporters of our coalition. They employ over 4,000 people here in Massachusetts, so we're happy to have their support. We also have grocers here in Massachusetts supporting us, along with members that include environmentalists and individuals and recyclers. But the point is, these organizations in our coalition have proven that they will commit to recycling initiatives and environmental initiatives when they make sense. The problem with question 2 is that it'll cost a lot of money without any significant recycling rate increases. That's really what the issue is here. This isn't a debate over, whether or not we want to clean up the environment and increase recycling. The disagreement is in how to get there, and question 2 will not get us there.
Is there a rebuttal?
It's very clear that the big businesses that have come here to buy our election or subvert it are doing so not to increase recycling. Coke, Pepsi, Nestle, Poland Springs are doing so to increase profits and to sell more sugary beverages to you. They don't want to be responsible for the 5 million bottles a day of garbage and litter that they're dropping in our beautiful state. They don't want to help clean it up, and they don't want to take responsibility for it. And that's a fact.
Ms. Giambuso, it's your question.
Sure. Bill, you say that proposals like question 2 have been copied all around the world and all around the country. It's my understanding that only 10 states have forced deposit laws. Delaware recently repealed theirs and is seeing recycling rate increases. Vermont recently decided against adding to their deposit law and instead chose universal recycling first. So if only 10 states have this program, how can you say that it's most successful? Don't you think more states would have it if it was such a success?
More states would have bottle bills if the beverage industry didn't pour millions of dollars into elections, like they're doing here in Massachusetts, like they're doing right now in San Francisco and Berkeley, California. They are doing everything they can to subvert the election process, just like they're doing here in Massachusetts. Vermont is an interesting story. The redemption system is run by the beverage companies, and they're employing the same firm that's trying to destroy their bottle bill. It's kind of like hiring the fox to guard the hen house. The reality is that Vermont loves its bottle bill. Their attempts to dislodge it have gone totally for naught. And in Delaware, that earlier success they had, well, right now there's a pretty strong movement to reinstate their bottle bill because the promises that they were given by the bottling industry have turned out to be false promises, and now there's a huge taxpayer burden that's hitting that taxpayers just don't want to pay.
And is there a rebuttal?
When we talk about financial burdens, I think we need to think of what question 2 will cost consumers at the grocery store. People probably remember back in 1982 when curbside recycling didn't exist. Now we have better recycling. Here in Springfield, people can recycle at the curb. 90% of communities of households in Massachusetts have either curbside recycling or some type of community recycling program. We need to build on those comprehensive systems and make recycling more convenient for people. In 2014, people shouldn't have to drive their containers back to the grocery store.
Mr. Sego, it's your question.
Half of all of our litter comes from beverage containers, and tourists to Massachusetts are constantly talking about the tremendous litter they're seeing when they visit our beautiful state. Voting yes on question 2 will stop bottle litter and provide funds to clean our parks, playgrounds, fields, and streets. But by voting no, the litter will increase. Don't your employers, the big beverage companies, care about all the litter that you're creating?
Again, our coalition is made up of over 3,000 members here in Massachusetts, a variety of members. And again, we share the same goal, keeping our streets clean, increasing recycling. The disagreement is in how to get there. Massachusetts doesn't compile this kind of aggregate data, but when you look at states like Maine, New Hampshire, and Vermont, beverage containers make up under 10% of what's found on the ground there. So what we have here is a ballot question that would spend $68 million a year in grocery costs and only address less than 10% of what's found on the ground. It ignores 90% of the problem. We can do a lot better here in Massachusetts, maybe by having more recycling receptacles in public places. Just like with curbside recycling, we need a program that targets all recyclables, not just a small percentage.
And is there a rebuttal?
Massachusetts does compile all this data. However, my opponent has said repeatedly that she doesn't accept any state government data, instead deciding to simply invent her own data.
Okay, Ms. Giambusso, it's your question.
Sure. Well, first of all, I have not said that repeatedly, and we do not compile that aggregate data here in Massachusetts. But my question for Phil is, question 2 would ignore 90% of what's found on the ground. I'm sure you can relate, Phil, to seeing a lot of other materials on the ground when you're walking down the street. What's your plan if we're spending $68 million in consumer costs on this proposal, another $27 million in unclaimed deposits? What's the solution for targeting the rest of those materials?
Thank you. I'm very glad you asked, because we do have a number of solutions. First of all, bottles make up about 50% of the litter that's found on the ground, and that's, again, state data, not my opponent's data, which is who knows really where that's coming from. The reality is that litter is a very complicated problem. The first thing we have to do is get the largest component of the litter, and that is empty bottles and cans. The second thing we need to do is address the fundamental causes of litter, and with the newly reinstated Clean Environment Fund, we'll be able to access that for education programs and for cleaning up that litter. States, municipal governments are just straining to be able to afford to pick up all the litter, which is why everybody sees litter everywhere. On my drive here, I took a wrong turn, and I must have seen on that one street about 20 or 25 water bottles alone. Litter is everywhere. My opponent knows it. I know it. And if people vote yes on question 2, people will see a huge amount of this litter disappear.
I don't know where Phil's getting his numbers. They do not represent Massachusetts as a whole. But the issue here, again, is that we're ignoring most of the problem for something that's going to cost consumers money. We absolutely need to keep our streets clean, but question 2 is not the answer. People want to recycle. They want to recycle whether they're on the go or whether they're at home, but we need to give them convenient ways to do it, and it needs to be affordable. Curbside recycling is about 10 times less expensive to operate per ton than a forced deposit system. We need to build on those modern programs.
Okay, and we are going to stop right there for right now. We will continue this debate on ballot question 2 after we take a short break. Stay with us. You're watching 22 News in Focus. You're watching 22 News in Focus. We are continuing the debate on ballot question 2, calling for an expansion of the bottle bill. Representing the yes on question 2 side, we have Phil Segal from the Massachusetts Sierra Club. And representing the no on question 2 side, we have Nicole Giambusso from no on question 2, Stop Forced Deposits. When we left off, Nicole Giambusso asked the question, so that means, Phil, it's your turn to ask the next question.
Thank you. I've been listening to the numbers here tonight, and they're vastly different from the numbers I was told yesterday, to sort of punctuate that point that these numbers are changing daily. Some of the numbers that have been changing include the amount that it would cost consumers. The real answer is when the bottle bills have been updated across the United States, the other side has been claiming 20, 40, 60, 80, 100 or more cost. In light of all this, and in light of the fact that the media has pointed out that your data has been either dead wrong or completely false, do you think that this was an honest mistake?
I don't know what Phil is referring to, but our numbers are accurate. They are on our website for anyone who's interested to see how they were reached. NoOnQuestion2.com. Under media, we've included a study there. Question 2 will add to grocery costs. The reason you've probably heard a higher number, Phil, recently is because we actually have an updated study that used more updated data. So we found out this is going to cost consumers even more. $68 million a year in higher grocery costs. That's more money that people pay at the checkout counter for a recycling increase of just 1/8%. That's minuscule. I don't think anybody would be very happy if their boss told them they were getting a 1/8% raise. It's not a big result. It's negligible, and we can do better here in Massachusetts. We need to target the entire recycling stream, not just the sliver.
Okay, Mr. Segal, would you like a rebuttal?
Just yesterday, I was told it was 60 million. When you and I were together in the North End in Boston, you said 140 million. Every day these numbers change. The media has found again and again that all the numbers that the other campaign is giving are suspicious or are false. I believe that they have lost all credibility.
Nicole, it's your question.
My question for Phil is that, over the years, there's been, your proposal includes this Clean Environment Fund, claims to set up a Clean Environment Fund that you say would send people's unclaimed deposits. So when people recycle at home and they send their nickel to the state, that money would go to a special fund. History shows that money has not gone to the environment here in Massachusetts. It's continuously been raided, and that money has gone to the general fund. So how are you going to ensure that money will go to the environment when it certainly hasn't in the past?
To not change a law because you're afraid that somebody someday could change it again is a little bit more paranoid than I'll ever be. In reality is that our state has raided these so-called dedicated funds only twice. Once in 1929, just after the stock market crash, and once in 2003, when our state was in unbelievably bad financial health. Hopefully this won't happen again for about another 75 or 80 years. It probably won't happen in my lifetime, and it probably won't happen in the lifetimes of many of the viewers of this show. However, we do have to do what we can to stop litter, increase recycling, and save money for our cities and towns. And what this will do is all of those. It will also reestablish the Clean Environment Fund, and that amount of money will be used to additionally clean our parks, provide public space recycling, and also give money to our cities and towns for these special programs and educational programs to help stop litter where it happens.
Is there a rebuttal?
Mm-hmm. Over the past 10 years, $350 million in unclaimed nickels have gone to the state's general fund here in Massachusetts. They have not gone to help the environment. Phil says that this is being paranoid. I think you need to, if you're going to make an investment like this, you need to look at history, because history shows that the Clean Environment Fund has continuously been raided. This money has not been used as it's supposed to. People are going to be paying more on beverages, and it's going to go directly to the state, not to the environment. And that's not fair to people who are being responsible in recycling.
Mr. Sego, it's your question.
In reference to the last question, go to bottlebillfacts.com, where you'll learn the true information. And again, what my opponent just said is just another example of false information. Your new ad shows that things that are 30 years old are out of date or passé. Now, speaking as somebody who's 60 years old, I'm a little offended by that, but I recognize there's a lot of things that are more than 30 years old. Like, for example, the computer is celebrating its 70th birthday, and the Bill of Rights is probably one of our best laws ever.
Is there a question there, Phil?
What is your notion of replacing a 50-year-old or a 30-year-old law with something that would be better than what is working now?
Question 2, that is one of our main concerns, that question 2 adds to an incredibly outdated system. As I said earlier, in 1982, when this passed, curbside recycling didn't exist. This might have been the only option for recycling. Today, we have so many more options, so much more access. So to build on an outdated system just wouldn't make any sense. It would be incredibly expensive, and it wouldn't be using modern recycling technology that works better today and is far more efficient. Adding to this forced deposit system is like spending money to bring typewriters into your office, or to use a rotary dial phone instead of a smartphone. We have more efficient options for recycling today, and we need to build on those. We don't need to go back in time. We're a progressive state. We need to be moving ahead.
Is there a rebuttal, Phil?
Or like using a computer instead of index cards. So there are many things that are incredibly good, and one of them is the bottle bill. It works incredibly well on litter. Unfortunately, 1/3 of all the beverages we drink are not covered by the bottle bill. So when you go out to the park and playground and you see all the litter, you'll notice, just like I do, there are no deposit bottles in that group. There are just water bottles, juice bottles, and Gatorade bottles. And that's what would happen. And we would clean those up if you vote yes.
Thank you. Ms. Jambuso, it's your question.
Sure. Our opponents often talk about targeting on-the-go containers, which again, we believe would be more efficiently targeted by putting more recycling receptacles in parks and in ball fields that target all recyclables. But they talk about these on-the-go containers, and this ballot proposal would add that 5-cent deposit to things like gallon jugs of water and half gallons of juice. Why are those large containers that people certainly consume at home included in this proposal? Why should people have to pay more out of their pocket for those?
Gallon jugs of water are not covered. Right now, I believe that the upper limit is a 3-liter bottle of soda, and there's no reason for me to believe that tomorrow that will suddenly change just because the opposition says it will. What really will happen is that you're going to notice in your parks and playgrounds that beverage containers that you used to find in your parks, on the streets, while walking around town, those beverage containers will suddenly disappear, like they did 30 years ago when the bottle bill was first enacted. Those of you who are probably around my age will know that 30 years ago when the bottle bill first went into effect, it was like overnight. The bottle litter disappeared. But now we need to add these newer bottles that didn't exist then in order to solve this new litter problem. And we can do that by voting yes on question 2.
Is there a rebuttal?
Sure. I think people can relate to seeing a lot of other containers, a lot of other materials on the ground when they're walking down the street. And we need to be addressing all of that. But spending consumers' money on groceries and sending more consumer money to the state for something that ignores 90% of the problem is just simply not the answer. People want to recycle. We just need to make it easier and more affordable.
Okay, and that was our last question in this debate. Time now for closing statements. Each candidate will get 1 minute for their closing. We did draw ahead of time, and it found Phil Seco. You are going to have the first closing. You may begin. You have 1 minute.
Thank you. I want to stress what's really important here. There are 3 things. First of all, the bottle bill is the best recycling system we have. Because of the bottle bill, 80% of covered beverages, it doesn't take a lot, just a nickel deposit, 80% of covered beverages are recycled. However, these newer beverages that weren't covered 30 years ago, they need to be covered as well. This will increase recycling, decrease litter, and save $7 million for cities and towns. The next thing to note is that this bill is being supported not just by the Sierra Club, but by important and well-known and just tons of nonprofits, about 100 in all, such as the League of Women Voters, the Environmental League of Massachusetts, Mass Audubon. It's supported by Governor Patrick, Senator Markey, Senator Warren, and elected leaders, 210 cities and towns. It really comes down to who do you trust? Big beverage industry or the nonprofits.
Thank you. That is time. And Ms. Giambusso, you have 1 minute.
Sure. As I've said all along, we all want to increase recycling and keep our streets clean. The disagreement, again, is in how to go about it. A lot of people here in Springfield and around the state have more convenient recycling programs. Technology and advancements in recycling have made it possible for people to have curbside single-stream recycling, which means that you put all of your containers in one bin, there's no sorting, and you put it at the end of your curb, put it at the curb, and it gets picked up. Somebody handles the rest for you. It doesn't make sense for consumers to pay for an additional recycling system in addition to the community recycling system that they're paying for, to then have to separate certain containers and drive them back to the grocery store. That's more hassle and more money. It doesn't make any sense. Let people recycle at home where it's convenient. Let's increase recycling by giving more people access so that they can recycle as many materials in one place at one time.
Thank you both so much for being here. That concludes today's debates. If you've missed any of them, you can watch them online at wwlp.com. From all of us at 22 News, have a great day.